A second person is in jail tonight for the armed robbery and attack on a Family Dollar store employee.
So this is the crime that led to the fatal shooting of Chicago Police Officer John Bartholomew, and we found out this suspect has been in trouble with the law before.
A Saturday morning in Chicago, a robbery suspect is handcuffed, in custody, and under the watch of two Chicago Police Department officers inside Endeavor Health Swedish Hospital in Lincoln Square. By every measure of the system that put him there, he is contained. But when the handcuffs came off so Alphanso Talley could be prepared for a CT scan, he reached under a hospital blanket and produced a gun. He pointed it at 38-year-old Officer John Bartholomew. He pulled the trigger. The bullet struck Bartholomew in the head. A 10-year veteran of the Chicago Police Department was gone before anyone in that room could process what they were watching. But here's the question that has sat unanswered since that morning. How did that gun get into that room? A man who was searched after his arrest and wand with a metal detector at the hospital entrance walked into a secured medical facility with a loaded 10mm handgun. Nobody has officially explained how. That question is the thread this entire story pulls on. Stay with me, because by the time we reach the end of it, you are going to understand just how close that second officer came to never going home either. Welcome to Crime Cipher. We decode the cases the headlines summarize and the truth the system leaves behind. Subscribe if you are new here. This one does not let go. Endeavor Health Swedish Hospital sits in Lincoln Square on Chicago's north side. It has been part of that neighborhood for over a century. Tree-lined streets, family businesses, a community that takes pride in being exactly what it looks like from the outside. It is where people go when something goes wrong. It is where officers bring suspects who need medical attention because that is protocol. That is procedure. That is what the job demands. On the morning of April 25, 2026, it became something else entirely. Officer John Bartholomew was 38 years old. He had spent 10 years with the Chicago Police Department assigned to the Albany Park District on Chicago's north side. He grew up in suburban Morton Grove and lived in Edison Park. His partner that morning was 57 years old with 21 years of CPD service. Between them, they carried 31 years of experience into that hospital on a Saturday morning to guard a robbery suspect. Neither of them had any reason to believe it would be the most dangerous thing they did that day, because it never should have been. Alphanso Talley was 26 years old. He had been arrested earlier that morning for the violent robbery of a Family Dollar store at 3239 West Lawrence Avenue in Albany Park, approximately 2 miles from Swedish Hospital. $110 taken at gunpoint from a store that had been open less than an hour. Following his arrest, Talley claimed to need medical assistance. Chicago Police Department protocol required them to respond to that claim. Therefore, an ambulance was called. Talley was transported to Swedish Hospital. Bartholomew and his partner were assigned to guard him there. Upon arrival, Talley was wand with a metal detector as part of the hospital's weapon detection protocols. Endeavor Health confirmed this in an official statement, noting that the suspect was wand upon arrival and was escorted by law enforcement at all times. The wanding did not detect a weapon. What happened next is where this story turns. For roughly 2 hours after arriving at Swedish Hospital, nothing happened. Talley was in his room. Bartholomew and his partner were doing their jobs. The morning was moving the way these kinds of transports usually move. Routine, contained, manageable. But at 10:50 a.m., everything that had been building since 8 o'clock that morning arrived at its consequence. The officers needed to prepare Talley for a CT scan. Standard medical procedure required that he be unhandcuffed for the imaging. Officer Bartholomew removed the restraints. That was the moment Alphanso Talley had been waiting for. From somewhere on his person, concealed under a hospital blanket in a way that neither the post-arrest search nor the hospital wanding had detected, Talley produced a 10mm handgun. The same gun prosecutors say he had used earlier that morning at the Family Dollar store. He pointed it at Officer John Bartholomew. He pulled the trigger. The bullet struck Bartholomew directly in the head. A 10-year veteran of the Chicago Police Department dropped in that hospital room before anyone in that building could process what they were watching. Two hospital staffers who were present in the room fled immediately. Talley turned the gun toward Bartholomew's 57-year-old partner and fired again. The bullet struck the second officer in the chin and lodged in the back of his neck. Both officers were down. One was already dying. The other was fighting to survive with a bullet sitting against his spine. Talley was not done. Surveillance cameras captured what came next in full detail. He pointed his weapon at the room where one of the fleeing staffers had taken cover but was unable to get inside. Therefore, he moved. He needed a way out of a building that was about to lock down around him. He approached a hospital engineer and took the man's ID badge by force. He used that badge to move toward an employee entrance, but a glass door stood between him and the outside. Therefore, he shot through it and kept moving. What followed is the kind of detail that sounds too strange to be real until you remember that surveillance footage captured every second of it. Alphanso Talley ran out of that hospital completely naked. Medical staff had removed his clothing as part of standard procedure before the CT scan. He was running through the streets of Lincoln Square with nothing but a hospital gown in his hands, electrodes still attached to his chest, and a 10mm handgun. He chased a hospital employee through the grounds demanding their car keys. He did not get them. Therefore, he kept running. Chicago police responded to the active shooter call at Swedish Hospital at 10:53 a.m., just 3 minutes after the shooting. By 10:58 a.m., they had confirmed an officer was shot and that the suspect was running on California Avenue. By 11 a.m., they confirmed 2 officers had been shot and called for backup. SWAT teams arrived within 15 minutes. CTA buses were rerouted. Residents in the surrounding blocks were warned to shelter in place. An entire North Side neighborhood locked itself indoors because a naked man with a loaded gun was moving through their street. Bartholomew and his partner were transported to Advocate, Illinois Masonic Medical Center. Officer John Bartholomew was pronounced dead just before 1 p.m. He died of a gunshot wound to the head. His partner, the 57-year-old with 21 years on the force, was listed in critical condition with a bullet lodged in the back of his neck. Private surveillance cameras picked up Talley running through residential yards, still carrying his hospital gown and still armed. At 12:10 p.m., less than 90 minutes after the shooting, Chicago SWAT located Alphanso Talley hiding under the porch of a home in the 2600 block of West Carmen Avenue, approximately a third of a mile from the hospital. He was still naked. The 10mm handgun was recovered at the scene. The manhunt was over. Alphanso Talley was taken into custody, and the immediate crisis was over. But the question planted at the start of this episode was still sitting there unanswered. How did that gun get into that room? Here is everything that is confirmed. Talley was searched after his arrest at the Family Dollar store on West Lawrence Avenue. He was wand with a metal detector upon arrival at Swedish Hospital. Endeavor Health confirmed both of those things in their official statement, but therefore a 10mm handgun ended up concealed under a blanket in a CT room. Prosecutors acknowledged in court that nobody knows exactly how it got there. Fraternal Order of Police President John Catanzara addressed it directly, saying that nobody knows if it was tucked in a fat fold or tucked inside his body. A gun that should not have been in that room was in that room. As of the time this episode was written, the official explanation for how that happened does not exist. What does exist is the charge sheet. Alphanso Talley faces 20 felony counts, including first-degree murder, attempted murder, aggravated battery, robbery, and kidnapping. His next court date is set for May 20th. Everything he has been charged with remains an allegation until a court of law determines otherwise. But the surveillance footage, the shell casings matched to his firearm, and the testimony of everyone who was in that hospital room that morning are not going anywhere. Officer John Bartholomew was laid to rest at St. Andrew's Greek Orthodox Church on May 8, 2026. Officers came from across the city and beyond to say goodbye to a man who had spent 10 years showing up for the city. He was 38 years old. He removed a pair of handcuffs because medical procedure required it. Therefore, he is gone. His 57-year-old partner survived. By the time of Talley's detention, hearing his condition had improved. He was alert and able to respond using body cues. A bullet remained lodged in the back of his neck. 21 years on the force, and now a long road of recovery ahead of him, carrying the weight of a morning that neither officer should have had to survive. The memorial outside Swedish Hospital kept growing in the days after the shooting. Flowers, candles, and photographs placed against the wall of a building that had spent over a century being a place of healing. Some things do not make sense no matter how long you sit with them. This is one of them. Talley's court date on May 20th will be the next development in this case. Crime Cipher will be following it. If you have seen anything new come out of this investigation, drop it in the comments below. If this episode stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not because it is entertaining, but because Officer John Bartholomew's name deserves to be spoken beyond the people who already know it. This has been Crime Cipher. We decode the cases the system hopes you forget. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Until then, stay sharp out there, because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room is the thing nobody thought to look for.